As you continue to prepare your offerings, and those offerings are made accepted. This morning's inspiration reading is taken from the Hosea, from the book of Hodge. And reading passage number 1. Hodge says, the modest person is strong, and one who is true in word and just in deed and praise. Houses are open to the humble, and a wide seat is given to one who is gentle in speech and conduct. But sharp knives stand ready for the unrighteous intruder, for there is no entrance except for the righteous. He goes on to passage number 2, and he says, those who are blameless in matters of conduct, no words can prevail against them. And those who are self-mastered are harsh or kinder to them than their own mothers. And all people become their servants. Let your name go forth then, while you yourself are silent, and you will be recognized and respected. We give thanks for those words from the book of Hodge. Those words that continue to inspire us in this time. And as we prepare for the reading of the litany of sacrifices, the sacrifices have been duly collected by young princes. And we have Queen Fania at the altar, to assist at the altar table. In your black book, page number 15, I believe you will find a copy of that beautiful litany of sacrifice that I believe we have been reciting for the last 33 plus years, and we've made very little change, and quite frankly, there's very little need to change. The words are beautiful. They cover the philosophy and the principles that we strive to govern ourselves by. So if we could stand, and we will recite the opening paragraph together, and then there are some call parts. Let's read together. Save us, O Holy One, by your name. Vindicate us by your might. Hear my prayer, divine protector. Listen to the words of my mouth. How can we repay the Holy One for the gifts that have been given to us? We will lift up the cup of salvation and call upon the God of our ancestors. We will fulfill our vows to our Creator in the presence of all our people. Gladly we bring our sacrifices to you. We will praise your name, O Amen Ra, for it is good. Umoja, unity. We should strive to maintain unity in the family, community, nation, and race. Kujichagulia.
Self-determination. We shall define, name, create, and speak for ourselves.
Jima, collective work and responsibility. We shall build and maintain our community together. Our brothers and sisters' problems shall be ours to solve together. Ujima.
Cooperative economics. Together we shall build and maintain our own businesses, and together profit from them.
Nia, purpose. We shall make our collective vocation the building and the development of our community and the restoration of our people to our traditional greatness.
Kuba. Creativity. We shall do as much as we can, in any way we can, to leave our community more beautiful and beneficial than when we inherited it.
Together. Iman, faith. We shall believe with all our hearts in our Creator, our people, and the righteousness and victory of our struggle. Amen. The candles of the Guzo Saba are burning brightly. Kneeling pads have been laid at the front of the altar for those that may wish to come forward for a moment of prayer. Others, you may assume a comfortable position at your chair. I will take a few moments to bless these sacrifices. Holy One, we thank you for our lives. We thank you for raising us up human. We thank you, Holy One, for leading us to this place called Mose, an oasis and a dry, parched desert. Holy One, we thank you for these sacrifices. We thank you for each and every one that took time out of their day to come out, to share their resources, to share their time, to share their energies. We ask, O Holy One, that you bless each and every one that gave. We ask that you allow these sacrifices to multiply, that we may continue to expand this work and go forward in a more positive and forceful way. We ask that you be with us throughout the remainder of this service. Bless our members that are traveling abroad. Bless our beloved Brother Tayumba, who's recovering. We ask for a speedy recovery. We ask for blessings upon him and his family. We ask blessings upon all of the sick and the shut-in and those without adequate food, clothing, and shelter. And we ask for a blessing, the Holy One. We ask for a blessing that will come into the lives of those that merit it. We can't speak in terms of absolutes, but for those that merit it, and you, O Holy One, know. We ask that you send that blessing right now to uplift and to help people in their lives in their daily tasks. Be with the one that will bring the message this afternoon. We ask that you open your hearts, open your mind, internalize the things that you have seen here today, the things that you've heard, the things that you have experienced. These are matters that are designed to help improve you in your daily lives. We thank Dr. Davis for coming in and sharing his ritual ceremonies, giving us insight into that world, and sharing some very positive energy and information that we all can grow from, that we can all take from. And this is what it is to be a member of the Mose community, to worship, to respect and remember the ancestors, to build community, to work and assist our brothers and sisters. And as I close this prayer, Holy One, I close this prayer in the remembrance and the sacrifices and the suffering of our ancestors, those that came before us, those that have survived and bore the brutality that we may be here today, those that shed their blood and laid down their lives that we can enjoy the measure of freedom that we do today. We do not take these things for granted. We pray that their spirits find peace and harmony wherever they may be. Be with us, O Holy One, throughout this day. Amen. Ra and Ashe.
Usually by the time I get home, it's afternoon.
You're so productive today.
It is usually afternoon. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Great. Big week. We're small but mighty group,
Yes,
as we always are. And it's a blessing to be here. Say Ashe. You made it to another Sunday, another day in the year 2014 or 6354 in our numbering system. It's a blessing, Ashe. You know, the fact that we are here and everybody's busy moving around doing stuff. And I invite you to just put your mind on God for a few minutes, Ashe. I invite you to remember who you are at the deepest level this morning, Ashe. Give thanks and praise to the Most High, known by many names, sometimes known as Amun-Ra, sometimes known as Ptah, sometimes known as Anu, sometimes known as Khonsu, sometimes known as the Nebuchadnezzar, sometimes known as Ozamari, sometimes known as Jehovah, sometimes known as Allah, sometimes known as Nomo, sometimes known as Ngai, sometimes known simply as I am that I am, but that great spirit, that great power, that great intelligence that guides all life, that guides all possibilities, both past and future. And we say Ashe. Give thanks to our ancestors, pour libation this morning powerfully, and continue to remember who they are and what they are in our lives and their examples for us, and we say Ashe. We give thanks for our elders this morning, for elders who continue to encourage us and teach us and guide, and, give you a little nudge when you need a little nudge sometimes. And this morning we ask the elders in the room for permission to continue, if that's all right. Sorry, give all of our elders, whether they're here or not, applause. It's a blessing to be here. I had to share a little bit about the kind of week that I had. It was an unusually busy week for me. I don't usually let myself get pulled in this many directions, but it sure did happen. I was invited starting last year to be part of a camp of young men from around the state of California from 14 different communities that are part of the Sons and Brothers Initiative. And these are young men who are coming from many different kind of situations. Some of them are coming from middle-class families and the kids make good grades and went to college. Some of them one kid was there wearing an ankle bracelet. And I'm not talking about, decorative. I'm talking about the kind of ankle bracelet where he's being monitored by the juvenile justice system, right? There are young men there who have both parents in their home. Some young men who didn't have either parent in the home. So there's a lot going on with our young people. And as part of that, my week, Moshe Milan, who's a good friend of mine, and you all know Moshe from the drum dance culture community, and he and I drove up to just below Reno on Sunday, about a 4-hour drive, and I got there without mishap. And so I don't take that for granted, that you get someplace without mishap, right? And so we did the opening circle, very beautiful ceremony. We're working together with some Latino brothers from the National Compadres Network, a group of brothers who are involved in fatherhood work in their community. And so part of what has happened is that we started to work with our Latino brothers because the state of California is Black and brown and Asian Pacific Islander and Native American, and there's a lot that's going on in all of those communities. Some things that are common, some things that are unique to us as folks of African descent. And one of the things that got introduced was this idea, and it's interesting because I think I played some part in introducing this notion of Ashe as a affirmation, as a word of power, as a heck out, if you will, in terms of putting something on the energy. And from the Latino community, from the Spanish-speaking community, they put palabra, the word. And so it became palabra Ashe. Palabra Ashe. So can the word have power? Can the word have life? And so we did, what we were asked to do on Sunday night, and opened up the circle with 100 or so young people and about 30 mentors and camp advisors, in a very beautiful space in the mountains of the Sierra Nevadas. And then on Monday, I got in the same car and drove back to the Bay Area, 4-hour drive to a retreat for the Rockwood Leadership Institute, where I serve as the board chair. It's an annual board staff retreat. So I did the 4-hour drive on Sunday, did the 4-hour drive on Monday with no mishap. Ashe. Did the meeting, came home for the evening, got on the plane the next morning, flew back to Reno. And there's no direct flight from here to Reno, so you got to go to LA, for Las Vegas to go to Reno. What should be about a 25-minute flight turns into a 3-hour travel, right? And so as the plane is coming into Reno in the mountains, the pilot said, make sure your seatbelts are fastened. We're going to have a few bumps. It was more than a few bumps. It was one of the bumpiest, approaches, and I fly a lot, so it was one of the bumpiest approaches, and this plane is bouncing, and I look over, and there's this big old, bulky, white dude, and he's sweating. He's red, because he's scared. I'm looking at him, like, he's doing this. I'm looking around, I'm seeing, a couple other people looking like they're ready to put on the life vest at any moment or whatever. I don't know if it's going to help them, life vest in the mountains, but, I sat there thinking, like, I'm in rock. I'm in rock. I'm like, I feel protected, right? But we landed without mishap. Got in the car, drove an hour from there to get to the campsite, and we did some work that night. Had beautiful days in the days in between. But I noticed that, our young men need us. They need us because a lot of them don't have the spiritual grounding to navigate life without a mishap. They need elders, they need brothers and sisters, uncles, aunties, whoever can bring a powerful word to them. But as we did the work, I had another commitment, all related to the black men and boys where it had to be in Los Angeles. Same foundation that's hosting the camp had a meeting in Los Angeles with 30 or so presidents of foundations from around the state, and I'm the lead facilitator for that. And had to get on another plane on Thursday. If you follow me, you see where I'm going to. Thursday, flew down to LA, came back, thought I was going to have a 7 o'clock flight, ended up being a 10:30 flight. It was late, so it made for about a 13, 14-hour day for work and doing things in between. And we got to Los Angeles, brother and I were traveling together, and we got back without mishap. Drove back yesterday with Brother Jason Seals, and he's an instructor up at Marion College and teaches at San Francisco State. And as we're driving, he was driving probably 5 or 6 car lengths in front of us. We see a car trying to merge into the other lane, but there's a car there, and apparently the other car blew the horn, and this person overreacted, so they jerked the car back into their lane, ended up doing about a 180, and then slid over to the shoulder. There was no accident. There was no mishap. Ashe. A few miles up the road, another kind of thing. But both of them said, man, what are people doing today? People trying to jump in, it's almost like stay in your lane. That's where that term comes from. Stay in your lane, right? And so it was that kind of thing. I had to reflect that I made it here and I'm standing here without a mishap. I don't take that for granted. I don't take that for granted. And it calls into question what I want to share with you this morning. As we reflect, as we come together, we're always concerned about spiritual growth. Like, how are we growing as human beings? How are we growing in our ability to do what God sent us to do? And I just posed a rhetorical question to you. Are you doing your best? Are you doing your best? Are you doing what you came to do? I want to direct your attention to a passage in the Hosea on page 95. You have a Hosea somewhere near you on the seat. And you can find that passage. As you're finding it, that passage comes from the book of Declarations of Virtues. And these were essentially the affirmations or the statements that some selected ancestors made for purposes of Hosea about the kind of lives they had lived, the kind of work they had done, the kind of actions they had taken, how they had lived a life of Ma'at is the theme of those declarations. We want to read passage number 5. It comes to us from Nefer Sheshem Ra, the beautiful scribe of Ra. And let's read this passage together. Passage number 5 on page 95. I have spoken truly and done right. I spoke justly and repeated that which was just. I seized the right moment so as to stand well with the people. I judged between two in such a way that would satisfy both of them. I rescued the weak from those who were stronger as much as was in my power. I gave bread to the hungry, clothes to the naked, and brought the boatless to dry land. I buried those who had no children, and I built a boat for those who were without home. I respected my father, pleased my mother, and raised my sisters and brothers. Ashe. Ashe. Are you doing your best? Do what you came to do. Just pose this question for us because, it's something that my mother used to ask me as a little kid. If you did something in school and if you weren't yourself pleased with the grade, with the result, with the paper, with the a science project, whatever it was, her question to me typically was, but did you do your best? And I would have to reflect and be honest about, did I really do my best? Did I really study the way I should have studied, or did I wait the night before to kind of cram for this, right, for this exam? Did I wait to the last minute to do that science project and hope that I could get through just enough to be okay? Did I do my best? And I always had to ask myself that as a young person, and continue to ask myself that as an adult. Am I really doing my best? And I would invite us to think about 3 questions associated with this. What is your best? Like, how do you self-define your best? What is your standard? What is the bar that you have set for yourself? You know, do the ancestors inform that standard? Does spirit inform that standard? Do elders inform that standard? Do children around us inform? Like, what is your best? Because your best is not somebody else's best. Your best is not the best of your neighbor, of the person sitting next to you. It's got to be personal to you. So your best, if you're an athlete, if you run the mile in 4 minutes, somebody else run a mile in 3 minutes, 49 seconds, you got to figure out, is my best based on their standard? Is it based on my standard? What is it that best is based on? Second question is, are you using all of the spiritual tools you have at your disposal to be your best? Are you using the tools in your spiritual toolkit to the utmost? Or are some of those tools getting rusty? Or some of those tools in meditation or libation or doing healing circle work, whatever that tool might be, is that tool getting rusty because you said, well, I had this tool, say, at the beginning of the year, I used it, laid it down. Tools are meant to be used, Ashe. So are you using your spiritual tools? Are you using your mechanics, if you will, to the utmost? And number 3, how do you encourage others to be their best? How do you encourage others? So this passage gives us a sense of the best of Nefesh and Ra. Here it says, I have spoken truly and done right. Just that standard right there. You can imagine speaking truth all the time, in every situation, even when it's not comfortable to speak truth. Have you done right? Have you spoke justly and then repeated that which was just? Those 2 lines give us a whole lot in terms of a sense of his standard of conduct, his standard of behavior, that person's standard of mind, that have spoken truly and done right. It's one of the questions that we ask the young people at this camp quite a bit. Are you doing your best? However you find yourself situated, are you doing your best? And what we tried to do was sort of install in them some spiritual tools to work with that was based on their culture. This idea of palabra, this idea of your word, your bond, what is it that holds you accountable to people around you? Are you really doing your best? Are you doing your best and being able to be a good student? Are you doing your best at being a good role model for your younger siblings? Are you doing your best? And we had to ask ourselves, what are the standards that we would hold our young people to and then that they would hold each other to, even just for that week? And every day we kind of had to repeat in morning circle some wisdom or some story or some proverb about, are you really here taking full advantage of these adults, taking full advantage of the quietness? Some of it for some of these young people, they're not accustomed to quiet. They're not accustomed to what it's like to not be in a neighborhood where there's cars screeching and doing donuts in the middle of the block and gunfire going off, not just on the 4th of July, but all the time. All the time. They're not accustomed sometimes to being in a room where there's not a radio and a Game Boy and a TV all going on at the same time. So for some of them, they were afraid of the quiet. We had to work with some of these young people say, quiet is okay. Dark is okay. And it was dark up there. You could dark enough beautifully to see the stars. And some of them look up in the sky. First time they really notice the stars at all. They see the moon and they see a couple stars from the Los Angeles sky or from the Stockton sky, wherever we are. But we were actually pushing them to define what is your best. What is your word? What is the thing you can actually say Ashe to and not just be using it in an empty way? What is your best? How do you define that standard? How do you define it based on what your ancestors said? Are you being as courageous in your personal life as Malcolm was in his public life? Ashe. Are you being as persistent as Harriet was in her public service to us as an Underground Railroad conductor and then as a scout and a general in the Civil War? Someone who started a home for formerly enslaved Africans who was constantly battling poverty, constantly battling not having enough money, is are we living up to the standard that Harriet set? And I think we need to continue to remind ourselves that any ancestor that we revere, that we pour libation for, is like us. They had everyday problems, everyday challenges, and in addition to that, not so everyday challenges.
Yes.
And I'm not saying everybody's got to be Harriet or everybody's got to be Malcolm, but if you set a standard, if you're, again, using a metaphor out of athletics, if you are a high jumper and you want to jump 6 feet, you got to start somewhere.
Right.
You might start at 5'5". You might go to 5'6", but incrementally, every day, you're pushing yourself to jump a little higher, to get your form better. Sometimes it's the mechanics. Sometimes it's how you jump. And I'm old enough to remember that moment when they went from the traditional way of going over the high jump to the Fosbury 5. Some of y'all old enough to remember this, because for years, people went over the bar, they went knee first, and they kind of went over this way. And this guy named Fosbury started playing with this idea, if I can get my shoulders over the bar and bring the rest of my body, it changed the whole way that people did high jumping. And as I recall, he went from whatever the world record was, once he got good at this, it went like 6 inches higher overnight. Because the standard was different. And sometimes it does take to see somebody else's performance to push us to go to a higher standard. Because for years, another analogy, running milers, the barrier was to break a 4-minute mile. For years, nobody broke a 4-minute mile. And it wasn't until a guy from England broke the record, then all of a sudden, the record just started dropping. Because people had a sense that this can be done. Ashe? I think sometimes we have to set a spiritual standard to let other people know this can be done. That you can live a life of ma'at. You can live a life of service. The kind of service that Nefesh Sheshem lived, where he says, I gave bread to the hungry. I gave clothes to the naked. I brought the boatless to dry land. I had a boatless to dry land moment this morning. When I was pulling around the corner, I was going to be, Brother Davis, I was planning on being on time. I got to the corner at 98th and Bancroft. It was 8:58. I'm looking at my clock, and I get to the intersection, and I look over, and I see this sister standing there, nicely dressed. And when I saw her, this is funny how things work. I thought she was a Wose, somebody who comes to Wose, not a regular, but somebody who visits. She was standing at the bus stop, and I just kind of waved. And as I'm about to turn, she said, "Hey!" and made me stop. And I was like, "Okay." And I'm thinking she going to Wose, and she was like, and then I realized I didn't know her. And I said, and she was like, "Can I get a ride to church?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I'm thinking she's talking about here. She said, "No, I'm going to Paradise Baptist up on 98th. And I was like, "Okay." Now, by now she's in my car. I can't tell sister, "Get out my car. I thought you was somebody else." And I don't even know where Paradise is. I knew where it was once I got there. Because she kept saying, "It's over the highway." And I'm thinking, am I about to get robbed? Is something bad about to happen? But we driving, and we started talking about church. And she said, "What church you go to?" And I told her. She said, "You Muslim?" I said, "No." Because, of course, I got to be Muslim if I'm dressed like this, right? For a lot of our folks, that's the only reference point. But we had a nice little conversation. She was from St. Louis. She said, "I don't know about Oakland. I've been here for a few years. And I don't know." And when we got to her church, Paradise, I realized I actually had been there before. But it was and we greet each other in that sense of as people of God. Because she didn't know me, I didn't know her. And I was glad that I got to here with no mishap. But that's sort of brought the boaters to dry land. Brought the sister. She said, "I just missed my bus." And I realized if you miss the bus on Sunday, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. You're not getting where you need to get to nowhere on time. But it was a blessing. And it made me think about it again, what is our standard of our best? If I had just waved at her and kept on going, I would have been thinking, did I leave somebody who should have been here? Did I leave somebody that I need to have a conversation with? And I don't know what her day is going to be like. But she was a blessing in my day because she needed a little bit of ride, and she trying to go. She said, "I'm late for Bible study." And I wanted to say, "Well, you're making me late for ritual class." But I did not. Because that would not have been right. So I'm just using this example to say I'm trying to do my best, right? So as we work with these young people, again, we looked at this second piece. Are they using the tools that they have around them? Are they using the wisdom of the elders in their lives? And we're encouraging them through, especially through the power of stories. Ask your parents and your grandparents, anybody around you, what's their story? Like, how did they end up in the housing they're in, or in the neighborhood they're in, or in the job that they're in? Because often these young people don't ask their parents anything. And we did an exercise that's called crossing the line. Crossing the line is an exercise that has to do with identity and labels. And so you ask people to stand on one side of the room, and then based on how they identify themselves, you ask them to cross a line and then move back to the original spot. 3 questions like, are you black? Are you Latino? Are you gay? Are you straight? Are you a gangster? Are you a father? All the ways that people identify and label themselves. And invariably what happens is exercise get very emotional. And so in a group of 100 or so kids, as the exercise was ending, kids started breaking down. Kids started crying. And we were kind of prepared to catch them. And so we said, well, come outside, because this was happening indoors. And probably like 15 kids, 20 kids, just like sobbing, being emotional, because they had been holding stuff in. They had not had the opportunity to be in a setting where they get to let go. And these are teenagers, for the most part, 13 to 19-year-old age range. And a lot of them dealing with real hard stuff. And some of them just dealing with everyday kid stuff. And so I ended up talking to his little brother, Mauricio, 13 years old, and he was like almost uncontrollably crying. I said, do you know what question triggers you? And he was like, no, it's just, I'm holding all this emotion. And I never knew I don't know what to do with it. And he's 13, and I'm thinking, like, how much of this is hormonal? Because when you're 13, all kind of stuff is happening, right? And I started asking about his family, and like, would you spend time with your father? He said, my father's around, but he's not really present. Like, I see my dad, and I said, well, maybe when you get home, maybe what you want to try to do is invite your father to a conversation. Dad, what was it like for you growing up? And maybe that's an entry point, an easy entry point into learning more about your father and why your father is the way he is. And for you to say, and Dad, I need you. Like, I need you. I need you to be here just more than present, physically. I need you to be giving me advice, you know. And so, again, it was interesting to watch this and saying to young people, as well as myself and the other adults, are we using the spiritual tools we have at our disposal? Are we using meditation? It was beautiful this morning to sit in meditation as part of the presentation that Brother Davis did, because it gives you a chance to just sit with yourself, with spirit, an opportunity to sit. But so many of us are not in our habit. We're not in the habit of meditation on a daily basis. We're not in the habit of pouring libation. We're not in the habit of singing a song. Sometimes it's that song. You just need to hum something. Whatever it is. It might keep you kind of on track. Are we using the spiritual tools that we have at our disposal? One of the things that we did the night after that crossing the line exercise, it was beautiful in terms of how things come together if you have good intention. And what happened was normally we were doing groups of 20 kids and having inside of basically a TP structure, and then having a circle that involved libation, a circle that involved giving them a chance on a more personalized basis to talk about what was going on with them, symbolically taking a little string, and for every challenge or every gratitude they had, tying a knot in that string. And then giving them a chance to speak to what does your knot represent. And having kids really talk about, like, this knot represents me doing something to my somebody on my block that I would regret. Or this represents me not following the instructions of my teachers. Or this represents me getting involved in the juvenile justice system because of something I did. And the kids were able to take those knots, and then we gave them an opportunity to talk it out. Talk it out. And it was beautiful to see these young people be able to take that opportunity, use that space to do it. But after the crossing the line event, we felt like we needed to touch base with everybody. So a group of us, myself, Dean Tyler, who some of you have met, was the water bearer and the incense bearer. So we went to every cabin. It had about 10 or 15 kids, about 12 cabins, taking water, pouring water at the door, smudging the space. Which, interestingly, incense has two purposes. It has a sort of spiritual purpose of smudging, and it has a practical purpose of putting some nice smell in the air of cabins inhabited by little boys. Them cabins smell like boys. Like that smell that you have after you've been playing all day, and it's sunny outside, and you put 10 kids in a closed area. Y'all know what I'm talking about. It was like, and some of the kids were like, man, we're so glad y'all brought that incense. You know. And more importantly, we came and I was playing a little rhythm, and we would sing a song. Brother Jerry played his flute. And we basically just said, we're here to just bless the space. And to shake your hands before we say goodnight and offer you to have good dreams. Just have a good dream tonight. Find something to dream about that's going to take you through the night, right? But these are the tools. These are the mechanics of Ma'at, the mechanisms that we have at our disposal that we need to use. Everybody in this room has been exposed to this tradition. It's time for us to extend this tradition out into our broader community because our children are asking for it. All week, these kids were coming up to us as elders, thanking us. Say, thank you for being here. Thank you. And they would call me Baba Graves. Say, Baba, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for, being able to let us see something a little bit different. And a lot of kids, they really took it on seriously. And so they would see you and they'd be like, hey, Ashe. They would overuse everything Ashe, right? Balabra, Ashe, But it's okay. And as we left them, we said, you now have some tools to work with that maybe you didn't have when you first got here. So this last piece is, how do you encourage others? Because part of that encouragement to others is you have your standard of what the ancestors and spirit has given to you to do, making you a living libation, if you will. We ask ourselves that if you help someone else, you're helping yourself too. When you help others, you are helping yourself. You're helping sharpen your understanding of what our community needs. You're helping sharpen your tools, like something that you may have conceptually thought worked. You now get to see it work. We saw that this morning. Brother Davis is sharing with us of the rituals, personal rituals. Like, that clearly speaks to you. You do it because it's important, right? And it's sharpening. When you see someone do something that their heart is in, it sharpens your ability to do what you need to do. Ashe? So it's how we encourage each other. How do we make good use of the teachings that we have? Are we just collecting teachings and then putting them up on the shelf like artifacts? Or are we actually collecting the teaching and incorporating it into ourselves, and then, in whatever our own words are, speaking it back out to others? Speaking it to young people in a way they can understand. Speaking it to the uninitiated in a way that they can understand. And then we have to ask, what is our approach of encouraging others? Some people think fussing is encouragement. Now, some people respond well to fussing. Other people don't. Like, some people respond well to sort of positive affirmation. Well, you didn't do it quite right, but you can do it. That's different than, come on now, get it right. That kind of like that driver mentality. And everybody gets encouraged differently, right? We have to be compassionate, joyful. Can we listen to the heart of others and share with them what they really need as opposed to what we think they need? Ashe? We shared this idea that Malcolm taught us, and this idea of, if you change your philosophy, you can change your thinking. And if you change your thinking, you can change your attitude. And if you change your attitude, you can change your behavior. And then he said, and if you change your behavior, now we can get ready to get down to some action. So as you encourage others, what is the philosophy you're encouraging them with? Their worldview, how you think about how the universe operates. Because the minute you do that, again, saying it's a Kepler philosophy as an example, the philosophy of daily transformation. That every day, the symbol in Kemet was that scarab beetle pushing that ball of dung, the idea of pushing the sun up to its highest point, and then the sun completing its cycle every day. And when the new day came, the idea in Kemet, the idea that Africans had was, you get a chance to be good all over again. That you're not bringing the baggage from yesterday's business into today. Now, that's a different philosophy than some people who believe in the sins of the fathers. That you're being directed, like you had to work on things that somebody did that didn't have nothing to do with you. Ashe? But rather, what's your worldview? Is your worldview an African worldview? Or are you still kind of infected? You still get the virus of European thinking. So that idea of your philosophy as the basis for your thought process. And then having a habitual positive thought, having a habitual thinking that is not about the chaos in the world, but about the aspiration of order and beauty in the world. That philosophy is the grounding for that thinking. And in that thinking, if you think mind, you have an attitude of mind. You have an attitude of balance, right? Order, reciprocity, harmony. That attitude is then going to shape your behavior. Because how you orient yourself in the world has a lot to do with how you behave in the world. If you have a negative screw face attitude. You're going to have a negative screw face behavior. Ashe? But that behavior then begins to play out in all actions. Our ancestors said it simply. Think mine, speak mine, and do mine. There's a story I want to tell, and I didn't make it up. Once upon a time, there was this spiritual teacher, and he and his students were invited to the home of a friend for dinner. And 2 weeks before the dinner was to happen, they had entered into a vow that said they should fast. And the fasting had gone on for 2 weeks. And when they showed up to dinner, the students watched very carefully to see what would happen when they were offered food. And many of the students turned the food down. Now, the host had done a lot of preparation for this dinner. It was like a gala dinner. This was not the impromptu potluck. This was the festive dinner. Had made all of the best foods and brought all of the good drinks and had set it out beautifully on the table. And as each student declined the food, you can see the heart breaking of the host. And when it got around to the teacher accepted the meal and ate it joyfully and spoke well, and the students were looking at each other like, we thought we was having a fast. But when the meal was over and they left and they got down the road a bit, the students said, well, teacher, we had this fast and you just broke the promise. You just broke the fast. You just broke our agreement with each other. And the teacher simply responded, is it better to break a fast or break a heart? Is it better to break a fast or to break the heart of the person who had tried to do good, who had tried to please the folks? Sometimes our encouragement has to be based on what the other person needs. Not what we think they need, but what the other person needs. And that requires a certain kind of spiritual listening, a certain kind of heart-open listening that often in our busyness and in our way of doing things, we kind of forget. But this morning, this afternoon now, I want to encourage us to be our best, set high standards, encourage others, speak truly and do right. Speak justly and repeat that which is just. Seize the right moment as to stand well with the community, with our young people. Judge between two in such a way that will satisfy both of them as possible. Rescue the weak from those who are stronger as much as is in your power. Give bread to the hungry, clothes to the naked. Bring the boatless across the dry land. Take care of those and embrace those who have no children, and build a boat for those who are without one. Respect your father, please your mother, and raise your sisters and brothers. Ashe. Somebody should stand with me as we close this out for the day. It's good to see everybody. I hope that your week is going to be blessed. Are there any announcements that are not published in our handout? Anything that folks need to know? Mama, who is coming?
Yuli Day is going to have a summer performing arts program. It's the preschool through 8th grade, and it's Thursday, July 31st at 5:30 here. And so the children will be dancing and singing, and they've been instructed by Baba Nimley. I don't know if you know him, and Baba Obafemi. So they've been learning Spanish and Yoruba and dances, and it's going to be real nice.
And there are other flyers back there with the details.
Yes, there are flyers on the table.
Please come. Great.
And just a brief announcement. I'm looking forward to that. I'll be here. Just another brief announcement. Today at 3 o'clock, those that want to continue in this spiritual moment, there is a performance called Spirits Lifted, a musical celebration, and it's with John Santos and Amakalia Gaston. And I'll put it on the table there so you can see it, but it's just one copy that I have. But it's at 3 o'clock today, and it's $15, and it's at Eastside Cultural Center.
Eastside Arts Alliance? Eastside Arts Alliance? Is that weird?
Eastside Cultural, well, it's East 14th Street.
International?
I think they changed the name. Yeah. But the Spirits Lifted. It should be a very nice evening.
Okay.
One other thing, our brother Damu, who is a part of our community, is every Sunday from 5 until 8 or 5 till 7 or something like that at the Southern Cafe, which is right on the corner of MacArthur and Yeah, it's open. But, yeah, so, and it's a restaurant, so.
Used to be Club Illusion.
Yeah, it used to be a whole lot of stuff.
Used to be a whole lot of stuff.
It's been a Southern Cafe for a long time.
Yep, 2,000
He's
MacArthur.
playing
Just
there.
off of
From what time? From 5?
From 5 to 7.
Oh, nice.
Jazz and food if you want.
And as I mentioned earlier, Hadari and his fiancee, Candice Wicks, who goes by the name of Auntie, who's a performer you may know about, from Oakland, are in Accra with Young, Gifted, and Black Gold, the older group.
Okay.
They'll be visiting historic sites. Accra National Ghana Theater as the guest artist for a youth slam organized by young Ghanaians. They are bound to be well received. And we are, of course, the elders stayed back this time. Twice. He's who went once before, but now is one of the premier performers.